Welcome to Everything Fear. Today I'm going to be looking at my personal top 5 horror movies of the year 1988. Hello and welcome to Everything Fear, your one-stop shop for all things horror. I'm Kit Tinsley, I'm a horror author, film academic and general horror geek. Today is episode 11 in our series, A Life in Horror. In this series, I look at my personal top 5 horror movies of every year that I've been alive. And today, it's the year 1988. Number 5, Waxworks. Directed by Anthony Hickox, and starring Zach Galligan of Gremlins fame, Waxworks is a wonderful example of late 80s horror. It mixes humour with its horror in a very effective way. A group of friends are invited for a midnight showing around a new waxwork museum in their neighbourhood. The museum focuses on the grotesque and the violent. When the friends step behind the barriers, separately, they are transported into the very real world of the exhibits. This makes for a great premise, as the friends enter all sorts of different horror-themed exhibits, from vampires to werewolves to the Marquis de Sade himself. The special effects in this movie are great, some wonderful creature design and gore effects. Plus, just this film has a really creepy tone at some times, especially in some of the exhibits. Number 4. The Blob. This is one of the 80s remakes of 1950s horror movies that tends to get overlooked. It gets nowhere near the level of appreciation that John Carpenter's version of The Thing does, or David Cronenberg's The Fly. Perhaps this is down to the fact that this movie's director, Chuck Russell, doesn't have the cult status of Carpenter or Cronenberg. And, to be fair, his career highlight since this movie is the 1994 Jim Carrey vehicle The Mask. However, the previous year, 1987, Chuck Russell had helmed Dream Warriors, the third instalment in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, and a real fan favourite in the franchise. With The Blob, he took a, let's face it, very silly movie, the original 50s version, and he turned it into an intelligent and exciting horror movie. The practical effects in this movie are brilliant and really disturbing. The Blob really does feel like a serious threat in this film, unlike in the original. There's great acting all around in this movie, but particularly from a young Shawnee Smith in a pre-Saw horror role. Number 3, Child's Play. The movie that introduced the world to serial killer Charles Lee Ray and his diminutive doll form, Chucky. Directed by Tom Holland, who'd already proved his horror pedigree with the film Fright Night. Child's Play is a well-paced and plotted horror thriller. We're so used these days to the post-Bride of Chucky version of the character, with his humour and his self-referential quality, that we forget that the original took its concept very seriously. When young Andy is gifted a good guy doll by his mother, a series of bizarre events and murders begin. The movie takes a long time to reveal that the doll is possessed. Early on, you even question whether it is Andy that is committing these crimes himself. Brad Dourif plays Charles Lee Ray in his human form and also provides the voice of the possessed doll, Chucky. And let's face it, he is absolutely fantastic in the role. Also, the animatronic and puppet Chuckies in the first movie are far better than any of the ones that came later. Number 2, The Serpent and the Rainbow. It had been 4 years since Wes Craven had released A Nightmare on Elm Street, and the subsequent years had been filled with a few average horror movies for the director. The Serpent and the Rainbow, for me at least, represents the next great benchmark work in Craven's career. Based on a book by Wade Davis, it tells the story of a field researcher for a pharmaceutical company, played brilliantly by Bill Pullman. He's hired to investigate the alleged zombie drug that is used in Haiti to turn people into mindless slaves. This very real-world story leads him into a nightmare journey into a world of black magic and mind-altering substances. The torture scene in this movie, where Bill Pullman gets a large nail hammered through his scrotum, is still one of the most uncomfortable things I have ever seen on film. It's a really underrated movie that's sadly overshadowed by a lot of Wes Craven's better-known work. If you enjoy this video, if you could please subscribe, give us a like, and maybe tickle that bell icon to be notified when we upload future content, that would be great, thank you. Number 1. Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. The first sequel to Clive Barker's seminal 1987 horror movie, Hellraiser, is arguably the best in the franchise, and certainly the last one that really stuck true to Barker's vision. The story follows on from the first movie, with survivor Kirsty Cotton now in a mental asylum. Here she meets and becomes a protector to a young girl who solves puzzles. Unbeknownst to Kirsty, Dr. Chenard, who runs the asylum, is also obsessed with the Lament configuration device and the Cenobites. He sets about resurrecting Kirsty's evil stepmother, Julia. Meanwhile, Kirsty's evil uncle Frank contacts her from hell, pretending to be her father, claiming that he's in torment. With Julia and the Doctor seeking to take over and rule the Hell world, Kirsty faces no choice other than to enter the Hell dimension and form yet another uneasy alliance with the Cenobites. A masterful and grand movie that really expands on the lore and the characters of the first movie. It really is sad that from this point on, each movie got increasingly worse. Well, thank you. That was my personal top 5 horror movies of 1988. What was your favourite horror movie of 1988? Let me know in the comments down below. And until next time, stay scared and stay tuned.